Hello guys, it's Dr. Thompson. Today we'll be discussing common mistakes in OET writing, and this is the second episode of this series. If you are visiting my channel for the first time, I would advise you hit the subscribe button. Anytime I release any video or tutorials, you will be the first to be notified. And if you've not gone through my tutorials on speaking, reading, listening, and writing, I would advise you do that. You have a lot to learn from them. All right, let's go straight to what we have today. We'll start off with the use of being and being in OET writing. Sometimes some students, they tend to mismatch this. Some do match being and is or was or were, which is very wrong. And some other candidates, when writing, they match being with has or have or had. This is also very wrong. So there is a common rule. Whenever you are using being, it goes with has or have or had. And whenever you are using being, it goes with am, is, are, was, were. Do not match being with these verbs and with these verbs, and do not match being with this. All right, so let's look at these examples and see. Now, I've seen in writing, some students tend to write things like this. She is being referred to you for further management. This is wrong. Remember, BEEN does not go with is. Rather, is goes with BEING. So the correct statement should be, she is being referred to you for further management. Look at this second example here. He has been discharged from the hospital. This is also very wrong. Remember, BEING goes with is, are, were, was, while has should not go with this, rather should go with BEEN. So the correct sentence should be, he has been discharged from the hospital. All right, now let's look at this third sentence. They were being treated for infertility. These are some of the things I've been seeing from my students writing. Whenever I'm assessing their letters, I do see all these kinds of sentences, and these are actually very wrong. So the right sentence should be, they were being treated for infertility. Let's look at this again. She was being managed for a chest infection before he developed diarrhea. This is also very wrong. The correct statement should be, she had been managed for a chest infection before he developed diarrhea. Look at this statement again. The symptoms have been persistent. If you look at this place, we use have here because we say symptoms. Symptoms is plural of symptom. So we say the symptoms have been persistent. But this statement is also very wrong because have does not go with BEING. So the right thing should be, the symptoms have been persistent. All right, so let's look at this. Now, if you've been following me on YouTube, that's through my if you've been going through the community section of my YouTube, you will realize that every day I try to release quiz and different questions to see how you progressed in your writing. Like for example, 3 days ago, I released this quiz on YouTube, and look at the performance of those that responded to this. Okay, looking at the performance, it's quite a nice one. At least 74% of the respondents, they got the answer correctly. But if you look at this, some students, they still chose this. Look at this statement reads, she is being referred to you for further evaluation, which is wrong. Remember, is doesn't go with BEEN, it goes with BEING. That's why this is the correct answer. She is being referred to you for further evaluation. Some other students, they also chose this. Some said she has been referred to you for further evaluation. This is also very wrong. And I'm glad that nobody actually chose this, because this would have been double error. Okay, but nobody chose this. Fine. So let's go to the next correction. The use of contractions in OET is forbidden. You don't use contractions when you are writing any formal letter. What do we mean by contractions? Let's look at these examples here. I've seen students write things like this. She doesn't smoke cigarettes. This is wrong. You are using contraction here. This is not right. The correct statement should be she does not smoke cigarettes. Mr. Jones can't swallow solids. The correct statement should be Mr. Jones cannot swallow solids. She's not compliant with her medication. Don't contract any word. The correct sentence should be she is not compliant with her medications. She's been diagnosed with depression. Don't contract any word. The correct sentence should be she has been diagnosed with depression. Now, about 24 hours ago, I released another quiz on the community section of my YouTube channel. Look at the performance again. 20% they chose the. I say one of these statements is acceptable in OET writing, and somebody chose this. She's febrile, pale, and lethargic. There is a contraction here, so you shouldn't use it. This statement is wrong in OET writing. He doesn't smoke cigarettes. There is a contraction here. You shouldn't use it. 13% of the respondents chose this. He's been hypertensive for 10 years. This is also very wrong. 30% of the respondents also chose this. The correct statement the only correct statement here is she does not take alcohol. There is no contraction here. This is correct. And 7% of the respondents chose this. He can't walk without a support. Rather, you should say he cannot walk should be the correct statement. All right. Now, let's also look at another error, inappropriate use of commas and semicolons in OET writing. How do we use commas? We use commas to separate items on the list whenever you are making a list. For example, she presented with a fever, cough, headache, and a leg ulcer. So to separate items on a list, separating cough, all these symptoms, we use comma to separate them. But when we are now adding the last item, we don't add comma again. Another example, when we are separating phrases. For instance, he complains of shortness of breath. We separated it from inability to pass urine, separated it from difficulty with swallowing, and finally, pains in the chest. We can also use comma to separate an independent sentence from a dependent sentence. For example, although Ms. Jones has made a remarkable progress, she would need your monitoring and support. Here, we use this comma to separate this dependent sentence from this independent sentence. So these are common places where we use commas in OET writing. And how do we use semicolons? We place semicolons in. We use semicolons sometimes when we don't want to use conjunctions. For example, she presented with persistent symptoms. Instead of saying, and she had earlier used some medications, we don't want to use conjunction here. We decided to use semicolon. But note, when you are using semicolon, make sure that the two sentences you want to join together, they are related. If they are not related, if you still use semicolon, that statement will be wrong for you. So we are talking about persistent symptoms, and we are trying to say that this patient had earlier taken medications for these symptoms. That's why we can combine these two together. We cannot say she presented with persistent symptoms and then put semicolon and now say she smokes cigarettes. These two sentences, they are not related. So placing them side by side makes the sentence to be wrong. So we use semicolon in having two things in mind. We don't want to use a conjunction, and at the same time, the two sentences, they are related. Now, let's also look at this. In prescription writing too, in OET, we also use semicolon to separate one prescription from the other. look at it. I've actually described that. I've explained that in the previous in episode 1 of this tutorial. So you can actually refer back to that tutorial. Now let's look at this quiz I released some hours ago on the community section of my YouTube channel. Now the statement says choose the correct statement. Okay, here I wrote Mr. Jones has asthma, comma, he had several attacks yesterday. Now if you look at this sentence, you have two independent sentences. Mr. Jones has asthma. Another sentence, he had several attacks yesterday. You cannot use a comma to separate two independent sentences. Remember what I said earlier, how you use commas. So you cannot use a comma to separate two independent sentences. Rather, the right thing to use here should be and, or we use a semicolon here. So the second statement, nobody chose this, and I'm glad because this statement is actually wrong. Mr. Jones has asthma. He had several attacks yesterday. This semicolon, this colon here makes this statement to be incorrect. Let's look at option number C. Mr. Jones has asthma. He had several attacks yesterday. This is correct. So instead of using and here, the writer decided to use a semicolon, okay, and the two statements, they are related. So this sentence is correct. Now let's look at this last statement. 70% of the respondents also chose this. Mr. Jones has asthma and he had several attacks yesterday. Why is this wrong? This writer used both semicolon and at the same time. You can't use the two whenever you are in a piece of writing. So you can't use the two at the same time. So the only correct answer here is option number C. Okay, so I think this is where we'll stop today. And if you like my tutorials, I will advise you to hit the subscribe button below and also put on your notification bell. Anytime I release any video, you'll be the first to be notified. And do not forget to share and like my videos to give me some support. Thank you. And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me on any of these contacts. All right. Thank you, guys. Bye.